Hey everyone, it is late at night and I am Norman. So tonight we're going to talk about nostalgia. My wife and I are gearing up to watch the latest season of Stranger Things. We've seen all of the other ones so long ago I barely remember them, but we did really enjoy the show. And it was funny how we happened upon the show. I think my wife had heard talk about it, but I hadn't. And we were looking for a new show to watch and we came across MTV's Scream, which had come out at roughly the same time, I think. And yes, this was the show where they didn't even secure the rights to the iconic mask. I mean, that was kind of the whole thing. Sort of. And so Scream is kind of 90s nostalgia, I think, as well as kind of poking fun at horror movie tropes and whatnot. We started watching the show and I think we made it into 1 or 2 episodes and we were done. It was just obnoxious, plasticky, model-looking people that just weren't even real. So we quit watching it and we're looking around and we found Stranger Things. Absolutely night and day. Now we're watching a show where kids look like kids. They just look like normal kids and they're doing normal kid things that kids did in the 80s. Things that I did in the 80s. You get up, you're riding your bike all day long, playing D&D, being dorky and nerdy and imaginative, all the things. So I absolutely loved the show. And in preparation for watching the latest season, we were going to go through key episodes that are suggested that you watch, but I told my wife we should just rewatch the show, or at least the first season, because it was so great. And so we sat down and started watching it. This didn't happen the first time through, but this time, every time I sit down and watch it, within a few minutes, I'm getting up, going to the office, and putting this on. The F91W, or the CA53, the one that I'm always forgetting the reference to, or even the Far and Swit cassette watches, or my SKX mod, just because it has that nostalgic look. So all of this has gotten me thinking about nostalgia, and I was going to do a video where I just show these various retro 80s style watches that I have, but I thought we would actually dig a little bit deeper into nostalgia, because that's kind of my thing, now that I think about it. Even when I was young, I loved Charlie Chaplin. Later on, I loved 1800s seafaring journals, MadMen, vintage watches. It's kind of always been my thing. So the F91W is actually the successor to the F87W. And they are very similar, but I have to say the F91's case is cooler. At least just in looking at images. I haven't seen one of the F87Ws in person. But the F91 was introduced in 1989. It was designed by Ryusuke Moriei. I don't know how to pronounce that. And as of 2011, its annual production count was 3 million units. So this is the most sold watch in the world. And one curious aspect of the F91W is its water resistance. And I've actually tested this, but on Wikipedia, I found this little snippet. The front of the watch is marked water resistant. The black version, F91W-1, is 30 meters, 3 bar, i.e. 100 feet, 44 psi. The ISO standard meaning of which is suitable for everyday use, splash, rain resistant, not suitable for showering, bathing, swimming, snorkeling, water-related work, and fishing. But that is not the case. And even in this article, they point out that people have tested the F91W and gone down really deep without any issues. So I did a few little tests with mine, just kind of dipping it quickly in a glass of water, waiting to see if any moisture was in there, doing it again for a bit longer until I had it in there all day. Then I took it to the lake and swam with it on, and it was just fine. Now, all of this popularity with this watch has a little bit of a dark side too. In the early 2000s, intelligence agencies noticed that it was being used for nefarious purposes. According to secret documents issued to interrogators at Guantanamo Bay, obtained and released by The Guardian, the Casio F91W digital watch was declared to be the sign of Al-Qaeda and a contributing factor to continued detention of prisoners by the analysts stationed at Guantanamo Bay. Briefing documents used to train staff in assessing the threat level of new detainees advise that possession of the F91W and the A159W, available online for as little as 4 pounds, suggests the wearer has been trained in bomb making by Al-Qaeda in Afghanistan. United States military intelligence officials have identified the F91W as a watch that terrorists use in constructing time bombs. Anyway, the F91 is pure nostalgia. But why are we always so nostalgic, and what is nostalgia anyway? So the word nostalgia was coined in 1688 by Swiss physician Johann Hofer. It comes from the Greek nostos, which means homecoming, and algos, which means pain or aching. And it was originally diagnosed as a medical condition, with Swiss mercenaries becoming physically ill from longing for home. And speaking of home, Homer's Odyssey is the quintessential nostalgia piece, with Odysseus making his way back home. However, was Odysseus nostalgic for Ithaca, or the Ithaca of 20 years prior, when he was last there? Bear that question in mind as we dig deeper into nostalgia, because, yeah. But there was actually an entire genre of nostos pieces in Greece, the homecoming narrative. And then as far as watches go, we can see nostalgia there if we look at MadMen, Don Draper's watches, the Seamaster DeVille, Marty McFly's Casio CA53, the Ripley watch, the 7A28-7000, and I totally missed out on the reissue of that watch. I think I was like 2 years late on that. And I'll just throw out one of my favorite quotes that I stumbled upon somewhere. Memories are my future self spying on my present self. So with nostalgia, there's a thing like actual nostalgia. There's also weird mutations of it, sort of. Kind of like the question about Odysseus. Is he actually nostalgic for Ithaca, or an image that's in his mind of it? And that brings us to Fauxstalgia. Nostalgic for a past that may not have actually existed. In the age of infinite scroll, nostalgia has become a marketing tool, a mood and a meme, but the nostalgia flooding our feeds today isn't about the past. It's about the idea of it. This phenomenon, often called Fauxstalgia, describes a longing for a time we never truly experienced. It's the yearning for simpler eras, conjured through TikTok filters, vaporwave aesthetics, and AI-generated memories of 1980s summers we never had. Fauxstalgia thrives in an internet culture obsessed with reboots, retro filters, and analog vibes. It's comfort content, emotional escapism packaged as vintage fantasy. But beneath the sepia tones lies a fascinating question. Why do we long for the unreal? And what does it mean when the internet manufactures collective memories? And that's a really good question, because when I was a kid, I really wasn't into watches. I had some here and there. I had some cheap LCD watches. There were a few that stand out in my memory that I saw and liked, but they were just cool things like any other cool thing that I would see here and there. I really didn't think anything of them. So when I'm watching Stranger Things and I feel nostalgic for the old style Casios I have sitting on my shelf, that really isn't my past that I'm nostalgic about, but they remind me of that era. There's also a thing called simulated nostalgia, where we're nostalgic for media about bygone eras. And that's probably where I fit in the most. I absolutely love synthwave, I love MadMen, Bad Times at the El Royale, watching actual mid-century movies, looking at pictures of mid-century furniture and decor and architecture, images and media about the idea of a past. Over at a site called Legomore, there's an interesting piece about how synthesized nostalgia actually consumes real nostalgia and depletes it and destroys it. Interesting. Nostalgia for the past has supplanted our yearnings for the future, becoming the default marketing tool for corporations. Instead of asking what's new, they ask what have we done before that you liked. This trend transcends marketing tactics, reflecting a destabilizing era of remakes and reboots. Crucially, nostalgia is a finite resource, and its exhaustion bears unknown consequences. Jean Baudrillard's notions of simulacra and simulation offer a valuable framework for understanding this phenomenon. In the post-postmodern era, the line between reality and representation has blurred into hyperreality, where simulations precede and replace the real. Constructed nostalgia depletes this finite resource, erasing authentic memories and replacing them with inferior copies. Consequently, our recollections are overwritten by simulacra, leaving us with inauthentic memories devoid of the original substance. And yeah, that's a very interesting read. And all of my sources are linked in the show notes below so you can check them out. I don't know if I agree with that article, at least in my personal experience. And it may be the fact that I realize that the nostalgia that I love isn't really quite real. That it's sort of a sanitized, romanticized version of the past. And so I feel personally that occupies a completely different part of my mind and my thoughts than my real nostalgia for my own past. They're two completely different things to me. My romanticized image of the 1980s through synthwave and whatnot doesn't overwrite my actual memories. Those are completely different. It hasn't affected my actual nostalgia. Like visiting my close elementary friend when he moved to the city. We were so far away that when we visited each other, we would spend 3-4 days together, just staying the night at your friend's house and hanging out nonstop. My memories of getting my first Transformers, after wanting to get one for so long, watching the Transformers movie in the theater with the same friend that I mentioned before, all by ourselves, no parents, wandering through the mall looking at swatches. Even though I wasn't really into watches, I was into swatches. Skating through town with my cousin, who was older than me and way cooler at the time. And again, swatches. Skating, wearing multiple swatches on one wrist. And far more recently, the Certina that I owned. The one that I wore to Vegas, that was the trip that completely changed everything. That was when I dove all into dress watches and became obsessed with all things mid-century. Fashion-wise, vintage watches, all the things. But yeah, nostalgia is an interesting thing. So if simulated nostalgia isn't actual nostalgia. It's something different. It's something sanitized and romanticized. Then how is that different than saying what comes next? Just because it's inspired by the things of the past, that doesn't mean that it isn't what's next, right? I mean, there's nothing new under the sun, right? So why strive so hard to come up with something completely novel, especially if looking back and romanticizing it brings you pleasure, is an escapism that makes you happy? I mean, it's cool that futurism was looking to the future, wondering what the future would hold, coming up with ideas there. But for me, looking back at futurism is just as satisfying as seeing some of the new things that are coming out and seeing some of the new decor, the new architecture. Looking back at the old makes me just as happy. And if it's a reinterpretation of that, I feel like that isn't destroying nostalgia, but learning from what we did really well in the past. I mean, you can't argue that some of the mid-century design work was far superior to designs that have come later. I mean, I own some mid-century furniture, and I can tell you the designs of that furniture is definitely next level. So, I don't know. I'm biased. Thanks for watching.